We begin with this Fox News alert. Iran retaliating against Gulf allies after CENTCOM launched a new round of strikes against Tehran. This is the sixth straight day of U.S. strikes against the radical Islamic regime, and this time hitting bridges and other critical infrastructure around one port city that serves as a key hub to the Strait of Hormuz. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered on this Friday. I'm Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent. Tomi Lahren, co-host of The Big Weekend Show and host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick. Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Josh Ritter, Fox News contributor, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and co-host of The Weekly Rap Sheet on Fox Nation. Well, on your screen is a bridge in Iran that U.S. forces leveled in one port city near the Persian Gulf. And earlier this morning, CENTCOM released this video after striking a key port surveillance tower in southeastern Iran along the Gulf of Oman's coastline. Now, overnight, CENTCOM targeted more civilian infrastructure in the key port city of Bandar Abbas. You'll hear about that port city quite often. It's very significant, an escalation, if you will, and it marks the sixth straight night of strikes against the regime. Bandar Abbas serves as a gateway to the Strait of Hormuz. You see it there. It is a critical resupply route for the Revolutionary Guard Corps. And here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on why the U.S. expanded its military campaign.
Iran very much continues to talk to the United States of America and express that they want to make a deal with us because they are suffering devastating blows on behalf of our United States military. The reason for the recent strikes over the course of the last several days is because Iran violated the Memorandum of Understanding that we struck with them. Specifically, in the Memorandum of Understanding that they signed, they were not to fire on commercial vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And unfortunately, they have made the tragic decision for them to do that. And President Trump is not going to sit by and allow these active acts of terrorism to take place in the Strait without ensuring Iran pays consequences for that.
Lisa, it's very clear that the administration has figured out you cannot deal with Iran in earnest. They will not respect any MOU, anything written on paper. And so they've taken this escalating attack. And last night was significant. Bandar Abbas is key to the Strait of Hormuz and its infrastructure, attacks on infrastructure. That was the escalation. And Iran said that's a red line for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're seeing each side raise the cost for the other. As you pointed out, what the United States is doing, reaching beyond some of these military equipment and military targets to include transportation links and infrastructure as well, trying to make it harder for the Iranian regime logistically to move things like troops, weapons, fuel, and supplies as well, trying to put more pressure on Iran to maybe try to return to the negotiating table, although it doesn't really seem like Iran has much of an interest in that. And then on the Iranian side, obviously trying to increase the pressure and the pain points for our regional partners as well, and trying to put maybe increase the pressure on them so then they put the pressure on us. My only concern, as you mentioned, escalatory. Right? So where does this go? How much does this expand? And I have no doubt that the United States can accomplish whatever goals that we want. We have a mighty military. President Trump is tough as well. I guess the question that it begs is, what are the costs to accomplish said mission? And I don't think we exactly know what that mission is quite yet. And then what would it take to accomplish that goal? So I think those are my questions that I have now. But obviously, this is escalating.
And Tomi, Iran said, if you strike infrastructure, we will strike back. And we have seen Iran strike out against the Gulf allies, Kuwait, Bahrain. That's what they did at the beginning of this, which was quite shocking to people, to attack Gulf allies who had really been neutral until now. But I think it's fair to say they're no longer neutral in this.
No longer neutral. But I would also say, to Lisa's point, we know how Iran behaves. We've seen this pattern over and over again. And you mentioned the cost. I agree with you. There's going to be a cost, but I think there's more of a cost to continuing with nothing, or more discussions, or more one-sided diplomacy. I think the American people, they're worried about the gas prices, and I fully understand that. But I think what's more frustrating to everyday Americans out there that aren't war experts, that don't get the strategy behind this, is I just need to know what I can count on. I need to know what the next 6 months to a year is going to look like for me. And I think there are Americans who maybe weren't happy we did anything, but if we are going to do something, let's do something that's forceful. Let's do something that maybe it doesn't end in a deal, but maybe it ends in a better place than we were, and at least they know what to expect. Gas prices are going to go up, but it's not going to be, let's sit at a table and talk for 60 days and then return to exactly what we're doing, and so on and so forth. Just be honest with people, be transparent, let them know what to expect, and let them know what victory looks like. And maybe victory doesn't mean a deal with people who clearly don't want to make a deal or don't understand what a deal actually is. It doesn't seem like they want it.
Yeah, and Molly, it's a tough spot because the Obama era did not work. Just the speaking, the relying on words, they were violating the deal. There were sunrise clauses on when Iran could get a nuclear weapon. But of course, we don't want ground troops here. So maybe the middle of the road, containing Iran as best we can and using military action when necessary is the way this administration is going.
Yeah, and what Iran has been doing hasn't worked for Iran in recent decades, which is why all these Gulf allies that we have are standing with us now. They've been just as frustrated as the United States with the terrorism and the regional chaos that Iran has caused, and now they're on board. And actually, even a far greater number of countries have joined the United States in this frustration with Iran. So there is a broad pushback against what Iran is doing. But when Tommy raised a great point about, what does the next 6 months or a year look like? The midterms are looming much, much closer than that. And the Democrats are standing up, even just against something as bipartisan as the defense authorization bill, to get money for our military and continue funding things and keep our troops paid. And they're pushing back and taking Iran and using it and shifting it towards the affordability issue, as if this particular conflict is affecting the entirety of the affordability issue, from gas prices to groceries. And so that's going to be something that's challenging in the immediate months as we continue to look towards a solution to the Iran problem more generally, which, as you mentioned, hopefully comes as quickly as 6 months or less than a year.
Josh, and I think the question we don't have the answer to yet, and maybe President Trump doesn't even have the answer yet, is does this escalate further? We know he was weighing escalation. What does that look like? Does it mean seizing Karg Island, that critical island at the Strait of Hormuz, hitting Pickaxe Mountain, where they're believed to carry on, their nefarious activity? Or Frank McKenzie said we could actually seize the Hormuz Strait if we so chose. It would mean our Navy going into narrow ship areas that they don't like to do. But we do have the capability. It's just, does the president seek to use that?
Yeah, and this is really where resolve sets in, and why I appreciate the way that the president has been handling this. To Tommy's point, it would be a lot easier to be doing nothing right now. And maybe in the hands of a far weaker administration, that's what we would be seeing. But when we heard the press secretary talk about the president's thoughts on this, he's not going to stand to allow terrorist attacks to take place in that strait and not respond to it, because not responding to it is not furthering this negotiation. We're in a very bizarre type of negotiation where this is probably the only type of speech they understand, is speech through action. And so this is where it gets difficult. I have many friends who feel very differently, vastly differently on both sides of this issue. But I always say to them, well, what is your alternative? If you're not in support of all of this, what is your alternative? To allow this country to continue to pursue nuclear weapons, to have done nothing to begin with, or now that we're in it, to show weakness at this point, that we should be showing strength and resolve?
Yeah, it is a great question. What's the alternative? I've yet to hear a very good answer on that one.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.